On today's episode of Locked On Texans, Aaron Wilson stops by to share an update on what is going on with the Houston Texans coaching search. But first,
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
hey, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans. As always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTY_DAVIS_24. And ladies and gentlemen, I do not have my co-host, John Some Sports Guy Hickman, in the studio with me today, but like I mentioned, I'm not going to be here alone because I'm going to be joined by Aaron Wilson as we get an update on what is going on with the Houston Texans head coaching search and whether or not they actually going to expand the list of candidates that they actually interviewed over the last 2 weeks. But before we get into the talk with Aaron Wilson, ladies and gentlemen, I think we got to talk about whether or not the latest coaching news in the NFL will have some type of effect on the Houston Texans. And for those of you guys who don't know, Sean Payton, the guy who was the head coach of the New Orleans Saints for 15 years, led that team, my city, my hometown city, I do want to add that in as well, but led the New Orleans Saints to their one and only Super Bowl win during the 2009 NFL season. Payton had decided on yesterday that he will be retiring as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Now that leaves the NFL with a total of 9 head coaching vacancies in the league. Now, with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at this from a standpoint of how is this going to affect the Houston Texans? And I think this will have some type of effect on the Texans because prior to Sean Payton leaving the New Orleans Saints, I think we can make an argument that given everything that's been going on with this organization over the last year and a half or so, you might look on paper and think to yourself, well, the Texans might have the least attractive job for anybody looking for a head coaching job. But I would like to say, given the improvements that we saw over this past year, given the fact that the Texans do have some young potential players that can actually be a little bit attractive to some of these head coaches, then you can make an argument that they probably have I don't know, the fifth best head coaching vacancy, because I don't care what goes on. I do believe the Houston Texans are still in a better situation than the Jacksonville Jaguars. And yes, I understand they have Trevor Lawrence and of course the New York Giants. So that's two teams right there. I know for sure the Texans job might be a little bit more attractive to a head coach. But when you take a look at the open vacancy now that has taken place in New Orleans, I think that's going to affect the Texans' chances of getting, I'm going to come out and say it, a real head coach to come down here in the city of Houston and take over as the Texans head coach. And what I mean by that is, I take a look at a candidate like Brian Flores, and I say to myself, Flores is a guy who has a lot of options. And I think when you take a look at the landscape of the head coaching vacancies prior to Sean Payton stepping down, you got to look at it from a standpoint of, yes, the Texans were in the midst to get their hands on Brian Flores. And of course, it's because he already has a relationship with Nick Caserio. He already has a relationship with Jack Easterby. And of course, he already has a relationship with some of the guys who 9 times out of 10, like a Rex Burkhead, is still going to be on the roster. However, with the New Orleans Saints head coaching job opening up, now I'm looking at this from a standpoint where maybe the Denver Broncos, but I'm looking at this from a standpoint where the New Orleans Saints might have the most attracting head coaching vacancy out there now, which means it's going to make it a lot harder for a guy like Brian Flores to come down to the city of Houston. Hell, it might even make it a little bit more challenging for the guy for Jonathan Gannon, who, as of right now, it seems like he is the Texans' top candidate to take over as their new head coach. So I know the Saints didn't make the playoffs this year, but you got to keep in mind that they do have one of the top defenses in the NFL as of right now. They have one of the best wide receivers coming back from a really interesting and questionable ankle injury. Of course, I'm talking about Michael Thomas, and of course, their run game it still looks good because they still have one of the best running backs in the game in Alvin Kamara, and of course, that is a team that has a lot of questions surrounding their quarterback situation. As you all know, Jameis Winston played half the season, hurt his knee, and it seems like he may or may not be back with their organization. But they could be another team like the Denver Broncos, which could be one quarterback away from really establishing themselves as a championship contention. And if I'm a guy like Brian Flores and I weigh my options, and if it's coming down to going to the Big Easy or coming to H-Town, yes, Houston might be the better city, but of course, you're looking at a coach that is probably want to put himself in the best situation to succeed, and of course, that is going to be the New Orleans Saints. So it's going to have some type of effect on the Texans one way or another. Like I mentioned, I think the biggest thing of all is going to affect the Texans of hiring an established coach already in this league and taking over. And this is part of the reason why I believe we're going to see the Texans hire a first-time head coach versus a guy like Brian Flores who already has a lot of experience in this league.
Texan fans, we're always looking for the edge these days, and I'd like to thank OnlineGambling.com for sponsoring today's podcast. If you don't already know, Online Gambling is a website dedicated to giving bettors the edge. Throughout the playoffs, they're providing you with the best NFL tips, news, and more to help make your bets as informed as ever. If you're planning on placing a bet during the playoffs, make sure you head to OnlineGambling.com before you do. OnlineGambling.com gives bettors the edge by providing the best and most trusted experience online all day, every day. That includes their OG tips section, where you'll find their own Super Bowl picks as well as the inside track on how to beat the odds throughout the playoffs. Make sure you visit onlinegambling.com/NFL for all of the latest gambling news, tips, and odds to give you the edge throughout the playoffs. Remember, onlinegambling.com/NFL to make the most of this year's playoffs.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this latest installment of Locked On Texans. And as promised, we got our guy, Mr. Aaron Wilson, the new NFL insider from Pro Football Network. Aaron, what's going on, my guy? And welcome. And not just welcome, but congratulations on the new deal.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm really excited, Cody. Yeah. And I'm also excited to note that I will continue to cover the Texans locally, as well as putting some Texans content, when there are bigger stories about the Texans, putting that on the national outlet with Pro Football Network at profootballnetwork.com and pfn.365 on Twitter. And yeah, nothing changes. I'll be here in Houston, Texas. I'll be around you guys all the time. I look forward to kind of keeping my hand in with the Texans and, just continuing to cover the beat as well as expanding a little bit. And that was kind of something that has always been a goal. And people have told me, well, maybe you should do that. And I'd written for a few national outlets before, Pro Football Talk and National Football Post. And I've always enjoyed it. I think it's a challenge to write about the other teams and to be knowledgeable about them. And, I look forward to contributing to all their platforms on YouTube and Twitch and everything else. And writing mostly, writing a lot of articles. And we're in a busy time now because we have the hiring cycle, coaching search, the general manager searches, and everybody's waiting to see who's going to get the jobs. And there's so many candidates, so many interviews. And I think for anyone, until you kind of get to second round and they want to talk to these guys again, that's when it gets getting serious. And I think we're getting closer to that, especially for the Jacksonville Jaguars. For the Texans, they've talked to less candidates than others. I think, as I reported before, it is more of a targeted search. And the first one they talked to was Brian Flores. Obviously, Brian Flores, very good coaching candidate. They talked to Hines Ward and Joe Lombardi. Hines Ward, a former player. That's an emphasis from the league to give opportunities to former players. Having an interview is an opportunity. It's also can be sometimes, what if you become part of the coaching staff? And
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting to do that, to get a perspective. I covered Hines, one of the toughest football players, regardless of position, I've ever covered. Really a vicious downfield blocker. They made rules to change the crackback rules because of him. So I'm sure there's a lot that the receivers could learn about blocking and also catching the football from Hines. But yeah, it's interesting. So you look at the job Joe Lombardi's done with Justin Herbert, and go back to Flores, the leadership, the winning. Obviously, he had some differences with the general manager Chris Greer, and that's what led to his exit. And that happens sometimes in football. I would think there'd be more alignment if something was to happen with him and the Texans, with Nick Caserio and Jack Easterby, guys that he knows very well and has good relationships with. So yeah, we'll see if it's going to be him. And then very interesting and a hot candidate, really, and I think there actually is some real genuine, this isn't hype, real steam behind him, is Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles defensive coordinator. Hearing he's knocked it out of the park in all of his interviews. Denver, Minnesota, Houston, a very serious candidate, checks a lot of boxes for the teams. Very intelligent, a lot of knowledge of the game, very hard worker. I interviewed yesterday veteran defensive coordinator Greg Williams, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody remembers Greg, and Greg's pretty well known as a defensive guru. And he was with him with the Rams and the Titans when Gannon was a quality control. And he said he's one of these guys, he would anticipate the question and have the answer before you even asked it. Very smart, very hardworking. I talked to his high school basketball coach. They were talking about his poise. He was a good athlete. He got a scholarship to Louisville, and then a hip injury shortened his career. I think he's interesting, someone to keep an eye on in this search. And then Kevin O'Connell is someone that they had scheduled for an interview. I don't know if they finished it. I think he may have wanted to focus on the Rams playoff game, and perhaps they'll talk after that. There's no rush. Long time till they play a football game. So, and obviously I know everyone's accustomed from the calendar to this happening sooner in January, but the season ended later because we are now in a 17 game schedule. And that's why some of these are going to take longer. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was after the Super Bowl for some of the hires, but I think most of the hires probably are done by championship game, by the conclusion of that. But we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the hires are being done Senior Bowl week,
Mm-hmm.
next week. I'll be going to the Senior Bowl, so I'll look forward to seeing the college prospects at that, and kind of just keeping my ear out on the rumor mill and what's happening. But yeah, that's some of the stuff that's going on with the Texans. And yeah, but don't let me take up too much time. Want to get to all your questions.
Oh yeah. And Aaron, one of the main things I would like to ask you right off the bat is, we seen the Texans interview Brian Flores, we seen them interview Jonathan Gannon. I think we all agree those are names that we can actually get kind of excited about. We could kind of, follow them and see what type of coach they could be. But we saw like Hines Wars, Josh McCown, like the names
That's
where you
right. We
kind
didn't
of
talk about
like,
Josh yet. Yeah.
yeah, like names that you kind of like scratch your head and say, wait a minute. Given the fact that it's like the Texans have this broad search going on for their new head coach, what are some of the qualifications that the Texans are actually looking for in hopes of finding this new head coach?
Right. One thing you look for obviously is scheme and alignment and knowledge and a plan. So when you're talking to someone for an interview, and the Texans included, they want to know, well, how do you see our roster? How do you see yourself being able to work with this roster? How can you get us to be a winning team as fast as possible with the personnel that we have? Not knowing, of course, who's going to be on the roster. What's your system? What assistant coaches do you have commitments from that they would come with you? Who do you think you could get? Who's under contract and who's free? Who could we get to join us? Who might be able to get permission to leave their team? So you think about all of those things. Do you have any alignment? How amenable are you to keeping? Like, one thing I've heard is that the defensive staff pretty much is going to be back. A lot of the coaches are going to be back. Remember, they signed 3-year contracts, and Nick Caserio helped find most of these coaches for David Culley, who was dismissed after a 4-13 season. So James Campen is really highly regarded. as an offensive line coach. You would think Pep Hamilton has turned down an interview with the Carolina Panthers. I would think he's in the plans, and he's someone that I know they think very highly of, and what he did with Davis Mills. So it's like, who's the leader? Who can be the leader and have a vision for this as you take it into the next steps? Because really, the rebuild to me, they did the first foundation of it. This is a pivotal year because it's really a 3-year rebuilding project. I don't think anyone sees them right now being like a contender in year 2 of the Nick Caserio era. So it's got to be, you want this hire to be like a Mike Tomlin kind of hire. When he brought him up, I thought that was interesting. And so that might mean someone that's a little bit younger coach. So Jonathan Gannon, 39 years old. Josh McCown, 42 years old, never coached before. And yeah, we should probably get into more about McCown because you're talking about qualities. Here's what everyone tells me about with McCown and just what I've personally heard from everyone with the Texans and players. He's very, very smart. He's very tough. He was a good football player. He was a good athlete. And I think he brings some credibility, but he has not coached except being a volunteer at the high school level for his son's team. He's obviously going to be very current because he just finished playing. If he had been named the coach last year, he would have been the first guy to go from active player to NFL head coach since Norm Van Brocklin. And he was a really good coach, but that was in a different era. That was not obviously what's happening right now. What I think is better for Josh and probably for the Texans, if you surround him with the right coordinators, then maybe it can work because I do think he has the credibility and the leadership to stand in front of the team and they grow with him. It's a bit of a risk. It's an interesting, intriguing idea. And Josh has told his family, I am all in on coaching. So it's not any, like last year, he wasn't sure, he wasn't quite ready, and he wanted to be around his family. He still wants to be around his family, but he's going to want to be a coach now. And I think he is the words that all in were used to describe his approach to the coaching profession now. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, if you do go the McCown route, you have to be prepared for, some that will criticize it. And, because of, what about this guy? What about that guy? How come he jumps the line? All of those things. And that's okay. I don't think they're afraid of criticism. I think what they are afraid of, they don't want to fail. They want to win. They're trying to find the right combination. It's a variety. There's the most proven coach is Brian Flores. You can plug him in. But I think Brian would like some personnel say too, not maybe ultimate power, but you want to make sure that he's on board with it all. And then when you think about Gannon, the same thing. I mean, these coaches do want to have some say, in terms of the staffing and who you draft and all of those things. So your visions have to align. And the most important visions are, do Nick Caserio's vision and the head coach's vision, does that align? But yeah, I think they've got a good group. I mean, there's no need to interview 10, 15 people if you know what you want. If you're what you're looking for, I think that, I would call it a targeted search, not wide ranging the way some others have been. But I don't think that means it's not thorough or detailed. It's just, if you know who you want to talk to and you already went through this a year ago, why do you need to talk to 12 to 15 people? I don't think you do. And that's okay if that's what another franchise wants to do, but I don't think the Texans have to do that.
Texan fans, it's me, your boy, Johnson Sports Guy Hickman, and I'm here with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. Get Upside. My listeners and myself, we're earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time we fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use promo code Touchdown for NFL or SCORE for college for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up, cash back. So do not pay full price at the pump anymore. Do yourself a favor. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code Touchdown for NFL or SCORE for college. Locked On Texans listeners and family out there, it's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your daily plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good, you'll want to eat it. Unlike other protein bars, which can be very chalky, waxy, or taste like a chemical spill, you want to eat healthy, and I get it. It gets boring. By week 3, you may be thinking to yourself, this is just not it. Where's the chocolate? Well, got some good news for you. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. And to top it off, most Built Bars contain only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually carries around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and a dozen of those nasty, unwanted net carbs. So why not go with a Built Bar? And here's the best part. There's so many flavors to choose from. Coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, many more to select. And in fact, Built Bar is always coming out with a new limited time flavor. So continue to check out BuiltBar.com to see what's often happening new. Happens all the time. Just open your nose and follow the smell. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this latest installment of Locked On Texans. As you guys see in here, we got our guy, Mr. Aaron Wilson. Aaron, really quick before closing out today's show, what is it about Jonathan Gannon that has him among some of the top candidates around the NFL as of right now?
Right. I mean, I know that he's very prepared for these interviews. Comments have been made to me. He's crushed the interview. He's knocked it out of the park. Harrison Smith, the Pro Bowl safety from the Vikings, has told many people this is the best coach I've ever had. And he's played for Mike Zimmer. He's a very good coach. But he said, this is the guy I've learned the most from. And because he's able to have that little detail, that piece of knowledge, and that, tips and, really give you that information that you need as a player to make you better. That says a lot to me. In talking to people that know him, most of his life, he grew up as a friend of Brandon Staley's. There have been a lot of comparisons made to Brandon Staley as a smart, analytics-driven defensive coach that really has a good feel for the game. I know the Eagles' defense was not excellent this year. It was his first year as a coordinator. I thought he did really well with, like, say, Xavier Rhodes, getting the most out of Xavier. And Xavier's kind of at the tail end of his career, right? But he got a good season out of him as his position coach. With the Eagles, I really don't feel like, because he's a very linebacker-driven system, when you don't have someone like Darius Leonard there in the linebacking core, it's hard. But I think what you're getting with him is a smart guy, someone that did have a scouting background, much like Nick Caserio, and has also coached and paid a lot of dues and worked his way up. He became a student assistant at Louisville. I think it was like his sophomore year under Bobby Petrino, because he had a career-ending hip injury, catastrophic hip injury. So that started him down a path of coaching early, then going with Petrino to the Atlanta Falcons, then getting all that experience. Obviously, Petrino washed out with the Falcons, but this guy kept at it and was working for the Rams, working for the Titans, working for the Vikings, then the Colts, and now the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think he's on a fast track, but he's paid a lot of dues. He's 39 years old. He's been coaching since, I would say, probably now, he's had about 19, 20 years of coaching experience. He's been around great people. He's very well trained. He's worked with Frank Reich. I think everyone can agree Frank Reich is a very good coach. This guy has the makings to be an NFL head coach. And I trust what I'm hearing. No hype. I'm hearing a lot of good things about him. I think he made a great presentation for the Texans. Whether that's enough to land the job, or maybe what if he gets the Minnesota offer? That's not out of the realm of possibility. I think Denver will hire Dan Quinn, the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. I think he's their front runner still. I don't think anything has happened to change that. But they really liked Gannon. And George Payton is the general manager of the Broncos, and he came from Minnesota, so he knows exactly what Jonathan Gannon's all about, and he's known about it for a while. So, yeah, keep him in mind. He might be someone that the Texans could even face competition for, and that's part of what it is. You have to know the shot. If you're involved in hiring if it's a good candidate, other people are going to see the same things in him that you do. I don't think there's a wrong choice. I think it's just, obviously we don't, think Hines Ward's getting the job or anything like that, or, and I don't really haven't heard like any buzz behind Joe Lombardi, although I think he did well and Joe is a good coach. But, thinking of Gannon, thinking of Flores, thinking of McCown, those are the big names in the mix. And they haven't requested Gerard Mayo. And one thing that's important to note, so Gerard Mayo and Brian Flores have the same representation. I don't mean even just the same agency, but the same agent. So it's a little difficult to pitch both guys for the exact same job. And so you might notice that Gerard Mayo, he's not on the Giants list, but he's on the Raiders list. So, I think that's something just kind of that's a reality, right? So if I was, let's say if I was recommending you for a job, Cody, and I also had another friend. If I recommend both of you, then I guess my recommendation is kind of like it wouldn't necessarily carry as much weight. Like I'm just
Yeah, that
recommending.
makes sense.
Yeah, so it's just common sense, right? And for Flores, who's interviewing with the Giants, I think that's the job he covets the most. But I think he has a good understanding with the Texans. And no, it wouldn't surprise me if Flores wound up here. But to say that it's going to be this way or this or another way, that would be kind of getting in front of the skis, because there is a lot of moving parts and this can change very quickly. So right now they're in kind of a planning mode and on next steps.
And that was actually going to be my next question. Where do you think the Texans are with the whole Brian Flores situation? Because prior to Jonathan Gannon coming out of nowhere, it seems like he was at the top of almost everybody's list. So where are the Texans right now with Flores, if from what you can share?
They have a good understanding with him. They had a good meeting. They didn't really need to meet for very long on the Zoom because they know each other so well. There wasn't as much.
Yeah.
When you understand things, what's that saying? What's understood doesn't need to be explained. That's where they're at. Yeah, they have a bond with Brian Flores. So yeah, no, if they went in that direction, I think that'd be a great direction because it would add a strong leader and someone that can win and prove that he can win, even if he did have some, injuries or deficiencies with the roster. I mean, remember, they had lost 7 in a row and then they won 7 in a row. And he did that with Tua. And I don't think Tua's ceiling's that high, but they were able to coach Tua. And yes, he wanted Deshaun Watson. And no, Deshaun Watson's not going to play for the Texans. So that's another thing that it's not. People really love to connect the dots. Oh, I think I know this. I like to deal in the what, not what might be. I like to deal with what I think is really likely. And logically, no. I think Deshaun Watson and the Texans both need a fresh start. And they have their quarterback. They have Davis Mills. No, he's not Deshaun Watson. But with everything legally, and and again, I don't want to get into the case, but court of public opinion obviously is not gone very well with the type of serious allegations that have been made, and just allegations. No, nothing's been proven. He's never been charged with a crime at this moment or anything like that. It's just a matter of, I think, a fresh start. I know that's what he wants, which is to be traded. That has not changed. It doesn't matter who's the coach. It's between him and the owner, and also obviously, and he's not immune to this. I mean, you are on social media. You know what people are saying. That there's a lot of criticism. A lot of people that are, whatever. They everyone has an opinion. My point being, if Flores is here, no, it does not mean Deshaun Watson's here. He won't be.
Well, you guys heard it from one of the best men in the business, Mr. Aaron Wilson from Pro Football Network. Aaron, really quick, where can our listeners follow you at on all your social media platforms?
I'm on Twitter at Aaron Wilson _NFL. I'm on Instagram at Aaron Wilson 7128. and watch for those food pics and pictures of my wife Shannon, and some football too. But yeah, and then the website is www.profootballnetwork.com, and I'm excited to continue to contribute locally with radio and television and with writing as well. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm just gonna keep living here in Houston, Texas, and you just might see me occasionally like travel a little more, maybe to some of these off-season events or maybe a training camp tour. We'll see. I might move around a little bit to do some other stories, and I think that's sort of the next path for me in my career, my growth, and I always want to keep learning and getting better. So that's my goal. And this whole past year has been an interesting year for me because it's been one of change and transition. In some ways, nothing did change because I just continued to cover the Texans. But yeah, I have other interests, and sometimes I'll have some information about another team, and I love to share that. That's part of the fun of it. Okay, well, you can get a story on something else. But I think in everything you want to be versatile. You want to be as informative as possible. So that's my goal. And I don't really get into too much like, well, this person's doing that, this person's doing this. I just think you have to do your best. A cliche a lot of friends tell me, a lot of friends have said this to me: run your own race. Yeah, measure your own success. Yeah, just do your best and have fun while you're doing it. This is a kid's game, and it's a business too. But I think sometimes we can all get so serious about it that you know we forget that you want it to be fun. By the way,
Awesome.
let me give a shout out to someone. I was texting with him a little bit after the game. Charles Omenahu. He
I
hit
knew
us.
you was going there.
Yeah, yeah. Charles Chuck. Yeah, he had a quarterback hit. He had a big game against Dallas, and
Mm-hmm.
so good for him. He gets a trade, and the Texans really did him a solid by moving him
Mm-hmm.
to a contender. So yeah, then he's in the playoffs. So yeah, that's a cool thing to see. Yeah, yeah, I think it's interesting because like Whitney Merciless is in the
Mm-hmm.
Randall Cobb and all those guys, because yeah, we follow them very closely. You get to know these guys like a Whitney. I covered Whitney for so many years, and then you see Whitney playing somewhere else, and so yeah, it's interesting to watch that.
Awesome, awesome. And as always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at Cody Davis _24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.